Deputy President. Does anyone remember during the election campaign this was going to be a government all about transparency? Remember? They were very, very clear that they were going to be all about transparency. But what we've seen when it comes to the NDIS, and Senator Steele-John and Senator Reynolds, we've been requesting these documents and speaking to the refusal of this government to provide these documents for almost 18 months. And to Senator Steele-John's point, they denied they existed. Now they've had to admit they exist, but they are still hiding them in another show of lack of transparency, the opaqueness of this government. But before the election as well, Mr Shorten, as the then shadow NDIS minister, claimed that the NDIS was perfectly sustainable. There were no issues whatsoever with the NDIS. In fact, the Liberal government and Senator Reynolds as the minister was somehow behaving like pearl-clutching kabuki players when we were reaching out across the aisle and asking for bipartisan support and being honest and transparent about the state of the NDIS and its sustainability. So what have we seen since this government has come to power? They have now since recognised that the NDIS is unsustainable. There are too many participants on the NDIS, that there has been a complete lack of management when it comes to some of the behaviour of providers, not participants, providers. And so the NDIS continues to descend into chaos. Now, for those in the Australian community that look at the NDIS as this behemoth of spending, they think there's too many people on it. They think that it's a rort. They think that it's being manipulated. And unfortunately, some of that argument and goodwill is being lost in the broader community. But to the families and the families of participants and participants themselves that rely on the NDIS to provide supports to their loved one and their family, we know that this is one of the most important driving issues in their lives. And in the midst of a cost of living crisis, when we know more and more people who have a disability sit at the lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum, they are being punished even further by this government with its complete uncertainty and, quite frankly, meanness when it comes to treatment of those on the NDIS. In just a few months, participants that will no longer qualify for the NDIS are supposed to be sent over to this wonderful new world of foundational supports. And as Senator Steele-John mentioned, we don't even know what foundational supports are. This government can't even tell us what a foundational support is. Now, there's a lot of assumptions within the community as what they're supposed to be, but no one actually knows what they are. So where are these families going to go when, because it's particularly impacting children, where are they going to go to get support when their child is no longer qualifying for the NDIS? Now, one of the things that was supposed to be in place when the scheme was rolled out, ILC grants, they were supposed to be there to develop Tier 2 support so that community groups would be able to support disabled people in their community to more actively participate. So for those of us that remember, mine are all teenagers now, but I do remember going to music groups and play groups and all these different activities with my children when they were younger. And what these grants were supposed to do was support these groups to further develop so that they could actually include children with a disability more easily. Instead, we've seen the ILC grants turn into some sort of political football and not going to groups that require them and not going to the groups that have also provided advocacy within the space. In fact, we have seen in Tasmania, Autism Tasmania have to close because they were refused ILC grants. I know ILC grants have not been given to Autism Awareness Australia, the leading group for parents. But you know, what we've also seen is this complete uncertainty and kids falling through the gaps. We've got a 20-month-old who is blind in Victoria who the Victorian state government was refusing beyond his first pair of prosthetics to provide them. This little boy will need prosthetics until he stops growing, and this family is just one of a growing number of examples who are consistently falling through the gaps. Perhaps the Victorian by-elections will be a wake-up call for at least their health system.